talk about in this tab that's called Poor Design is that if we're going to be managing or analyzing the data in a spreadsheet using tools in Excel, it's very important that we have our design put together in a very consistent way, or that is okay for Excel to manage it. So for instance, it's very important that we don't have any empty rows. So if you go through your list or your data ranges, just make sure that you don't have empty rows. Also, I noticed in this specific spreadsheet that I have for name, the first name and last name. So if I need a sort by last name, this is going to make it quite difficult. Of course, there are tools in Excel that help me separate my text here in last name, first name, but to get started with our managing data and analyzing it, we want to make sure that we have it in the way that we can sort it out and record it and filter it, sorry. Also, for instance, here, the dates, we would want to have the formatting consistent. So the filtering and sorting is also working well in Excel. We don't want to have two dates in a single cell like we have here in this last column, in this I column. This is not going to help you when sorting and analyzing everything. Also, we don't really recommend having two rows for your headers. This is going to kind of complicate a little bit some of the things that we do here today. And as we go through our different tools, you'll understand a little bit more why. Okay, so one of the recommendations when working with long lists in Excel is making sure that your data is consistent as far as, the formatting, validating everything is okay, and making sure that your data is separated in the different columns for you to sort it easier. Like again, for instance here, city, state, zip code. We may need to sort it by state or filter it by city. This is going to make it pretty hard for me to do just by looking at how this is. Okay, so just keep that in mind when working with your tables. Make sure that you create your columns in a with a better design than this. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to move on to the next row, or the next sheet, sorry, table conversion. And to point out, just like we have here in this sheet, we have some step-by-step instructions for you to refer to after, and we have also video tutorials to create these tools, or to apply these tools. So you have that as a resource there in that spreadsheet as well. Okay, so let's talk about tables. When we create a list in Excel, just like we have it here, just by putting it in this list kind of layout, it doesn't necessarily mean that Excel is going to consider it a table. This is going to be a data range, and by converting it to a table, we get additional tools that are pretty handy when managing our data. So we want to make sure, like I mentioned before, we don't have any empty rows or empty columns. All of our data must be next to each other, adjacent here, no empty anything. So there are different ways for us to convert this data range into a table. Here I have in my Home ribbon tab an option that says Format as Table. So this is one easy and quick way for us to convert something to a table. Also, as we all know, there are tons of shortcuts. So if I hit Control T in my keyboard, is going to give me that prompt for me to create a table. So those are two ways that we have. But one that is a little bit more obvious is if I go into the Insert ribbon tab, I can go ahead and select this table option. So the first step is have the cell selected that's inside of the data. So anywhere in my list here, and I can go ahead and select table. So now Excel will scan the data around the cell that I have selected, and it's going to say, okay, this is the data that I found from A1 all the way to L200. And if I scroll down, yes, it is in fact where my list ends. And Excel also detected that my table has headers. So these guys up here are my headers. So I will leave this box checked. So just verify that before we hit OK. And then we're going to go ahead and agree with this Excel suggestion here. So now I have that my table changed as far as design goes, and we have some banded rows here, which is really nice when we are reviewing and analyzing our data. In the top part, I see that one more menu showed up called Table Tools, and it's giving me the design menu. So if I click outside of my table, I see that the ribbon tab disappears. If I click inside of my table, it's going to give me that set of options again. Okay, so if you happen to not see that, just make sure that you are the cell that you have selected is inside of that table that you just created. Now here we have different styles that we can choose from. If you click on that down arrow, we have different colors, combinations here. If we need a different header color, we have different combinations here, and we can just go with whichever we prefer. So I'm just going to select this one right here. To the left of this table styles section, we have a few other options here that are very handy when working with tables. I can select if I need a header row or not. If I want to highlight that first column, so if I need to really make that, give it emphasis, I can go ahead and select that box. I can also add filters to my header row just by clicking in this filter button. So it's going to give me that automatically for me to start filtering my data. And one of the very handy ones that I really like is this total row. So if I check this box, at the very bottom, it's going to give me this total row that if I click, for instance, in this years column, I'm going to see this drop down, which is going to give me a few functions for me to select from to calculate automatically at the end of that row. So if I'm not super experienced in Excel as far as formulas or function goes, I can go ahead and use this option to say, okay, Excel, calculate the average of the years of folks that have worked for this company. So all I need to do is just select this option, and now I get the average for the years of employment for this list. We have the compensation column. I can go ahead and click on this cell at the very bottom, and I can say, okay, Excel, give me the minimum of the salary or the compensation for the folks that work for this company. So there is the minimum value. So in each one of these rows, I can go ahead and select what is it that I want to have as a total here in the very bottom. So it doesn't have to be the same. I can say a sum. I can change it to a max. So you can go ahead and select any of these options here that you like to calculate, and it's going to be super easy for you. Now, another thing that you may notice is that here at the top, I have in the number 1 row, I have my headers, right? So I have my employee name, building, department. See what happens when I start scrolling down as I go through. Instead of having the A, B, C, D, my header rows are going to replace those headers, and it's going to give me my columns titles here so I don't get lost as I'm scrolling down. So there is a tool in Excel that allows me to freeze my rows and columns, but when I convert something to a table, this is automatically done for me. So it's pretty nice that I don't have to go in and manually do it. So let me go ahead and show you here. Going to remove this total row. I can go ahead and highlight the last column. This is not giving me anything because it doesn't have any content here. But as I see here, I can select my banded rows or not. Or instead, I can probably say I want banded columns. And as I click on banded columns, I will see that my styles change to give me styles for my banded columns, which is basically the same color combination as in rows, but it's nice that it adapts to my selection here. Now, as I go ahead and scroll to the very end, let's say I need to add additional records here for my employees. I can go ahead and start typing the next person's name. And if I hit enter, I see that my table expands to that next row. So there is a little bit more obvious. It's going to continue that banded coloring for each one of the records that I add. So it's really easy to expand my table. Same occurs whenever I need to add a new column. I can go ahead and say maybe I want one for a new compensation. It's going to automatically adjust the style to that new column that I'm adding. And again, it has to be right next to the column here that ends in my table. It can't be, for instance, OPQ. It has to be right next to the last column or the last row. Let's see. Any questions so far? Nope. Okay. So let's go ahead and now talk about sorting. Here, I'm going to move on to this sheet called Menu Sort. Now, again, I want to make sure that I don't have any empty rows, empty columns in my Excel spreadsheet. And there are different ways for me to access my sorting tool. I can go ahead and find it here in my Home ribbon tab. At the very end, in my editing section, I have my sort and filter, and I have my A to Z, Z to A, or my custom sort. Also, if I go to my data ribbon tab, I will see those options here as well in my sort and filter. So one of the options that I really like to use instead of using the icons for A to Z, Z to A, is to use my custom sort. So this is going to allow me to use different parameters for me to sort this entire list. So let's go ahead and see here how I can use multi-key type of sorting. So here, let's say in my sheet, I would like to sort by department. And then within that same department, I want to sort in alpha order for the employee names. So what I'm going to do here is select this first option, sort by, and I can go ahead and select my first level of sorting, which was department. And I have here a cell value, but note that we can also sort based on the cell color, the font color, and the conditional formatting icon. And we'll practice with each one of these here today. We can also sort by ascending, descending, or our custom list. So the most popular one is A to Z. I'm going to leave it at that. And if I want to then, after sorting by department, sort by employee name, I'm going to go ahead and add a level here. And then I'm going to select the next type of sorting that I need. But let's make this a 3-level type of sorting. So I'm going to add another level. And instead of going by department and then employee, I'm going to first say, I want department, then I want the status, and then within the status, sort by employee name. So I'm going to select this and I'm going to move up so I can go ahead and add here the status. So this is the order of my sorting, and I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now here I have all of my department for account management. And within my account management, I have my different status for contract, full-time, half-time, and hourly. And within each status, I have them alpha order here on the left-hand side. So that's going to really allow me to create those multi-level type of sorting when I have these long lists for me to, have everything like nicely organized. Now let's go ahead and move on to the next tab here that I have icon sort, because I want to also work with these little guys. Instead of going to our custom sort, we are pretty much, probably used to going to these quick and easy, just click A to Z or Z to A for a specific column here. So just wanted to repeat the steps to show you how this one actually works. So I'm going to select on this C column, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the sort A to Z. So depending on what column I'm at, that's going to be the column that is going to be sorted. So I'm going to select this project and contract service, and I'm going to hit A to Z. And now it's sorted based on the department. However, if I want to do the same for my status, let's say I want to, within the department, now go to the hourly, I'm going to go ahead and click here. And now what happened was that it sorted my status column, but it remembered my last sort. So note how my status is the primary sort, but then within this status, this department is still sorted off of an alpha order. Do you see that? So it's going to be, in a way, thinking in reverse. So if I want to do the same thing I did earlier, as employee name within status within department, I'm going to first do the last part of the sorting because the next one will override the last sort, if that makes sense. So I'm going to first, let's say, sort by employee name, boom. Then I'm going to sort by status. There it is. And then within my status, now I'm going to go into the department and I'm going to sort here. So it remembers the last sort here. So my department is alpha, and then it's going to be my status, and then within my status is going to be the employee name. So just keep in mind that when you're using these little guys, it'll remember your last sort, but the sorting that you're applying at that moment will override the last sorting you did. So that's why I kind of prefer this option right here, where you can specify the order of your sorting. It's clear and you have a little bit more control over it than using these keys here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about how I can sort using a custom list. And this has really come up in various occasions in when I work, at least. Sometimes we want to sort, let's say, by month, and we want to have, instead of alphabetize my months, I want to have them in the actual order in the year. So I want my January 1st, my February 1st, my March, go in that order instead of alpha order. Or if you're working with large lists with school names, you may want your elementary sites at first, and then your middle schools, and then your high schools, not necessarily have them all mixed together, right? So for that type of situation, you can create your customs list for your sorting in your Excel spreadsheets. So I have an example in this sheet. If I like to have my sheet sorted by status, but I want my full-time at the very top because that's the most of my employees' status. So I want my full-time and then my half-time and then my hourly, and then at the end I want my contract employees. So you can go ahead and create your list to the side that you wish your data to be sorted like. And this is a one-time setup that you need to do, and it's going to be set up in your computer for you to use indefinitely. So it is a little bit of work at the beginning, but then you will be able to use it after that day until you remove it. So the first step I'm going to do is I'm going to select the list that I want to use for my sorting options. Then I'm going to go into File, and I will go ahead and select Options. From here, I'll go to Advanced, and I'm going to scroll down until I find my option that says Edit Customs List, Edit Custom List. So I'm going to click here. And here, Excel has already some built-in lists. For instance, sorting by the day of the week in the exact order as we have the days, and like I was explaining, the months as well in the order that they are in the year. And here I'm going to use the import list, and because I already have it selected, it's going to give me that range, M1 through M4. So I don't need to enter anything here. All I need to do is just select import.
Sorry, where did you click to get to the custom lists page here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. Let me go ahead and let me go back and I'll show you again how to get there. So we're going to first select the list, and I'll go to File, and then we go to Options at the very bottom left. And then in this menu for your Excel options, you go to Advanced and scroll at the very bottom almost of this menu, and you can see the Edit Custom List here. You can go ahead and select that button, and there's the option to adding your custom list. Now you can find yourself typing those entries here, but it's probably easier to have them typed up, and then you can import it. And you don't have to necessarily have the list next to your data. This is something just to easily import the list as you want it to have it here. So I'm going to hit OK here. Once I'm done with my list, I see that it's part of my customs list. Going to hit OK, cancel out of this. And now I'm going to go into my sorting options. And now I'm going to select, let's say I want to do my status. So I'm going to continue sorting by status. Now at the end, it's not going to be A to Z or Z to A, but I'm going to select the option custom list. And from here, I can select the one that I just added. Go ahead and click OK, select OK again, and there we have it. This is going to be sorted in the exact order that we have it here in our custom lists. So this is, will you say you are like adding a filter? No, I wouldn't call it a filter because I'm still seeing all my data. I'm just telling Excel which order exactly I need my data to be in instead of just alpha order or reverse alpha. So you're specifying, even though this is not alpha, exactly how you want it. So like I said, maybe school sites in a specific order, or the months, in the way that we have them not alphabetized, or days of the week, or specific departments that you work with more at the top than, those that you work with less at the bottom. There are different cases that you would create your list for. Okay, so another thing that we may need to do, it's probably, well, let's go ahead and go on to the color icon sort tab, because we often need to sort by, alpha order and whatnot, but also if we're using colors or icons in our data sheets, we may need to sort by specific colors or fonts or icons. So that's something that you are also able to do when sorting. So I'm going to go ahead and select my sort option here. And I have here that I have different colors. I have the yellow, the green, the beige. So I can go ahead and say, okay, I want to sort by employee name. And it's not going to be based on the value, but I want to sort based on the color. So I can see here that I have the option of sorting by cell color. And I can go ahead and click on the cell color option, and I will see only the colors that I have in my sheet. So I can go ahead and say I want all my yellows at the very top. And then I'm going to add another level and say this is also going to be by employee name, but I'm going to continue with my cell color. I want all of my greens after my yellows. I'm going to go ahead and say I want then all of my grays. And lastly, I'm going to go ahead and select this salmon color. And for those that are not colored, I'm going to leave those A to Z. So now I can go ahead and click OK. And now I have all of my yellows together, all of my greens together. And not only that, they are alphabetized here by name. So you can also use the colors so that you can sort them. And then another option for you to sort is based on the icons. These are created using conditional formatting. And sometimes we may think, okay, well, Angela, you can just do the sorting based on the values. You can say, oh, just based on, the highest value and then go to the lesser value. But let's say I want my greens and then I want my reds and then my yellows, or I don't necessarily want the rows alphabetized based on the actual amount, but by the name, but I want all my green arrows at the top, or those that earn more than the average at the top. So I can go ahead and go and say, okay, I'm going to delete all of these. And now I'm going to go by conditional formatting icon. And I want, it's going to be compensation, sorry, here. And then I will say, oh, all my greens up there. And then go to conditional formatting, then all of my reds, for instance. So now I have that. I got all my greens, then all my reds. So those are just examples that you can use to also sort. You can also sort by font color, which is another way of, putting your data together. So I'm going to just remove this. I'm going to start again. Sort by employee name based on font color. And here is giving me the only color that I have for a font as different than black. So I can go and say, okay. And now I got all my reds at the top. So those are different techniques. So you can go ahead and apply them if you need that. Anyone know how do you custom list sorting on Excel in Mac? Ooh, Heather. I know that version varies a little bit. Not sure. We can probably research and see if that's something available in a Mac or not. But I'll research that and send you in a follow-up email the answer to that question.
I've been researching it around because there's no options button under file. So, but yeah, you don't need to worry about taking class time to do it. I just thought if anyone knew off the top of their head.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll check it out tomorrow and send you an email. Let's go on to the next list, the next sheet here, column sort, because, less popular or less frequent use, we may also need to sort by columns. We typically just go ahead and sort by rows, but let's say here I have all these cities and I want to sort them in alpha order. So for this, we're going to go ahead and select the columns that we need to sort. So I'm going to place my cursor up here in the B header, and I'm going to go ahead and select all of my columns up to my N, up to Washington here. So again, I'm going to use my sort option here. And here in this one, I'm going to just zoom in. Hold on, let me zoom in so you guys can see it better. Here in this, I see that I have the option here to sort by column. So I need to change the setting to be row. For that, I'm going to go over to options. And instead of sorting top to bottom, this is going to change to sort left to right. So I'm going to go ahead and make that selection, click OK, and now here it says row. So now I'm going to go ahead and select the row that I need to sort, number 1. And what I want to do is just modify or sort from B to N, leaving A where it is. So that means that Atlanta here should go to B, right? And this data will follow that column up to B. So I got 9,500, 9,000, 8,500 here. So that should be in B once I'm done with this. So now I'm going to click OK. And there it is. Now we got our cities here in alpha order, and we got the data that corresponded to each column together with that header. Now I may need to, modify my colors here so they're not repeated, but at least I have them in alpha order really easily. All right, any questions about sorting? We got there a few tricks maybe that you didn't know that were very handy. If you don't have any questions, now let's go ahead and talk about subtotals. Now for this option, one key thing to remember is that the first thing we need to do is sort our data for in the column that we like to get our subtotals for. So for instance, if I have this data and I want to have the total of compensation earned in the department, ADC, admin training, etc. I have to first sort it because what Excel does, it's going to go through the department list. And whenever there's a change in the department, it's going to give me the subtotal. And then it's going to scan through and see, okay, all of these are admin trainings. At the end, subtotal here. So imagine if your data is not sorted, every time there's a change in department, it's going to give you a subtotal, which is not going to work the way we want it to work. So step number 1 is sorting our data by department. So I'm just going to quickly just give it A to Z sort here just to make sure. And now in this same data ribbon tab at the very right-hand side, we have our subtotal option. So here I'm going to click on this guy and it's going to ask me, okay, at each change in department, use the function sum, or you can say count average, max, min, product. You have all the different functions here. I'm going to say sum. And I don't want to sum my job rating because that wouldn't make sense. I want to do my compensation. So I'm going to select what is it that I need to sum here. So now I'm going to go ahead and select OK. And now it quickly just gave me my sum for my compensation column for each one of the departments that I have. So this is great when you're presenting or your supervisor asks you for that piece of it data that you need to calculate quickly. This is going to give you that amount pretty nicely. Now, another thing that we may need to do is give it a different, a next subtotal. So another level would be if I want to now know how many people are in the status contract, how many are full-time, how many are half-time, how many hourly, by here in the status, why admin training total, admin training total.
If you look at your total, it has numbers, not the actual numbers. It has the number symbol or hashtag. I was just wondering why that is down here.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's because my column is not wide enough.
Okay,
So I can't see all of the numbers. Yeah, sorry, it wasn't like getting that question. Yeah. So whenever you have those hashtags there, you can go ahead and make it wider, and then that will go away. So I want to see the count for each one of my status within each one of my departments. Again, we want to make sure that we sort it first. So maybe before we even do the subtotal, sort first by department, then by status, so you have everything sorted the way you want it. Luckily, this is already done. So I'm going to go again to the subtotal option. And now I'm going to say, okay, Excel, now for every change in status, give me the average or the count, sorry, for status here. Let's see if this works because this is text and the count typically is numbers. So we'll see if this one works. So see, replace current subtotals. I don't want to do that. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Oh, there we go. So I have here how many people in each department are in each one of the contract or the status here. Now, you may note on the left-hand side, we have the option of expanding or collapsing. We got our different levels. So if we want to just focus on those subtotals that we just obtained, we can go ahead and click on these numbers to expand or collapse our data. So I can see it clearly now that in the ADC department, this is how much my employees are earning in total. And these are the employees I have by status. Then if I want to just focus on the first subtotal I calculated, I can click on number 2 to collapse this one. And now I have all of my subtotals here. And I see it right here. And then the last or the top level would be my grand total for compensation and how many employees I have. So this is a really handy tool for me to just go ahead and see quickly, you know, those numbers by department, by status, you know, you can do different calculations. Now to remove this from your sheet, go to subtotals. And then I can go ahead and remove all. And this is just going to remove the subtotals calculation. I know it sounds pretty drastic, but I'm going to just remove all, and it's going to bring my data sheet back to normal. So that's one nice handy tool for you to use whenever you need that type of information. All right, let's go ahead and now talk about filtering. Very popular tool. Super easy to use, right? So we'll find out, we'll learn a few tricks here with our filtering tool. First, to enable our filters, if we don't have them as a table already, our data, we can find that here in my data ribbon tab. I can go ahead and click on my filter, and I will see those drop down arrows in each one of my columns. So I can go ahead and select the drop down for the department if I need to go ahead and filter by a specific department. So a filter, just to back up a little bit, is used to hide information that you don't want to focus on at that moment. So let's say I just want to analyze anything that's going on in my ADC department. I can go ahead and select only the ADC department, select OK, and now I'm going to be viewing only the ADC department. So very nice to focus and get rid of all the other distractors that you may have. So super simple to use here. I'm going to deselect this, and you can select multiple departments at a time. If you want to go ahead and say, okay, I want these 3 first departments, I will say okay. And now I want to only focus on the status full-time for those 3 departments. So you can do as well multiple levels of filtering. So you're saying my department must be ABC or XYZ, and it must also be a full-time employee. So it's that and criteria or and condition for you to see the filter when you use it in multiple columns. Now, you don't necessarily only need to go with the options that you have here in the list. We also have additional text filters here, and we can say if my data equals this, then I will see it, or begins with, or ends with, contains, does not contain. And depending on the content of your row or your column, sorry, is the different filters that you're going to see. So for instance, for date filters, you have more options here. So if you want to focus on last week's, next week's, last month, next quarter, you can go by month just by going into this in all dates in the period, year to date. So you can go ahead and use any of this criteria, not just this listed in this box here. For our numbers also, you can go ahead and see the number filters, and you can see here what are your options. So let's go ahead and remove our filters by just selecting clear. And let's say I want to focus on those departments that are related to services. So anything that has the word service in it, I want to view it in my filter. So I'm going to go ahead and select this filter. I'm going to go into text filters, and I can go ahead and select contains, and I can type the word that I need to see in that column. And it's not case sensitive or anything like that. I can just type the word service, go ahead and click OK. And now I have my audit services, my project and contract services. I can give this a sort so I can see it here. So I'm just sorting the data that I'm viewing because I applied a filter. So that's really nice. And then in addition here, I'm going to go ahead and select those that, let's say I'm going to use a custom filter. The hire date is after, let's say, just those that were hired in the last century. So let's say 1999, sorry, let's go ahead and say from 2000 and on. You can go ahead and select OK. And now there we have those records that we have in our filter. You can see in the bottom left corner how many of those met the criteria I selected out of the 741 in total that I have in the sheet. So you can go ahead and apply those filters as you need to. Now, another way of applying filters in a more interactive way and more easy way to know what you're looking at that time is using slicers. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to my slicers tab. And for this specific tool, I do need to have my data converted into a table. So remember what we needed to do first. I'm going to click on inside of my data. I'm going to go into Insert, select Table. And Excel is going to scan through. I make sure that it's okay with the selection. I'm going to select OK, and now my data is in a table format. When I do this in my design tools for my tables, I see that I have the option of inserting a slicer. So a slicer is pretty much like a filter. So I'm going to select, okay, I want my department, I want my status, and I want my job rating slicers, meaning my filters. Going to click OK, and I can move these to different parts of my sheet. And using the handles, I can make it a little bit larger. And this one, I know I have many more departments because I have this scroll bar. But by selecting this slicer, I can go ahead and say I want 3 columns so I can see them all. There we go. And also, I can go ahead and change the style for each one of the slicers. So I can give it a different color for my department, got my job rating, and I got my status. Let's do this one yellow. There we go. So now, just like we were working with before, we can say, okay, I want to see only my logistics department, and I can just click on logistics, and it's going to filter my data. And then I can go ahead and say, I want to see those that are full-time and those that have a job rating of 5. There we go. So super easy to work with. If you're new to filters, you can go ahead and give it a shot with your slicers to understand exactly what is it that you're looking at just by looking at these this criteria here in your data sheet. So you can go ahead and remove any filters. And here I selected, or I didn't remove the filter number for my job rating that I have selected number 5. And right off the bat, I can see that I don't have any one with a job rating of 5 in my audit services department or in my compliance or in pharmaco, whatever. So you can also see items that are not super obvious using the other filter, which is pretty obvious here. So those that are grayed out don't exist in your selection. So it's a pretty neat tool. Also, if your supervisor is super new with filters or anything like that, you can show them, hey, you can use slicers, and this is going to make it so much easier for them to learn and use if they're not super tech savvy. Let's go ahead and talk now about the limitations of filtering. I'm going to move on to my complex OR sheet here because I want to talk about some of the things that are not possible using filtering. So let's say that I want to focus on those employees that have more than 15 years in the company or that earn more than 100,000. So when I go ahead and apply a filter, let me go ahead and go to data. Let's say I want to select those employees here that are greater than 15 in my years column. I say, okay, all right, I got them here. Perfect. And now I want to select those that are over 100,000. So I go into the salary, I go to the numbers, greater than zeros, 100,000 there. Okay. So now this is only going to give me those that comply or that are that meet both criteria. These are 15 and over and those that are 100 and over. So this is not going to give me those that earn more than 100,000 but have less than 15 years. So that or condition is not possible using your multiple column criteria. So what do we do to remove this limitation, or how do we work to obtain this data in our spreadsheet? So I'm going to clear my filters, and I'm going to go ahead and add a few columns here to the top of my sheet. And I will go ahead and add a copy of my headers here. There we go. So this is first step. Just add a few rows here at the top and just copy your headers here at the top so they're exactly the same. So this is where we're going to determine our criteria. So let's say I want my criteria in my filtering to be more than 15, right? And now in this next row, I'm going to specify my second criteria to be met. So I'm going to say above $100,000 here. So why don't I put it in the same row? Because when I put it in the same row, it's basically doing the same as the normal filter. If it's in the same row, it's the and condition. So 15 or over and 100,000. But if I put it in different rows, then that's going to give me the or option. And now I'm going to see that I have the advanced filtering here. So first step, set your criteria here. Let's say you want to add a status. You can do that as well, as many ors as you like. I'm going to click inside of the data that I like to filter using this criteria here. I'm going to go to advanced. It's going to scan through, give me my range here. And my criteria range is just going to scroll up, move this over here to the side. I'm going to say, this is my criteria. So I'm going to select years, salary, there. So this is where Excel can find what I need from that list. I'm going to go back and I'm going to click OK. And now I see that even though this guy here does not meet the 15 years criteria, it meets this one right here. So I have both parameters met in this filter. So you can add as many parameters that you like, not just those that fulfill both criteria. So that's a pretty neat item if you need to use something like that. Let's move on to the last sheet here before we want to run out of time, because I have pretty nice shortcut to grab any data that is not duplicated, or remove any duplicates and created a new list. What I typically do before I learned about this is that I went through and I probably applied a conditional formatting to identify those that are repeated, and then I had to delete one or do something like that. But it also, it altered my original list, right? So using the advanced filtering, I can go ahead and grab those unique items from my list. So I'm going to go ahead and click on side of my data, go to advanced, and select this copy to another location. And then I'm going to select copy to, and let's say I want to copy everything in my list, removing duplicates, copy to, and I'm going to put it over here in M1. This is where I'm going to put my second list. And I want my unique records only. So now by just checking these items here, I'm going to select OK. And now I see that I have a brand new list, and it's going to remove any duplicates that I have in my initial data sheet. So another great way of using this is that sometimes I need to get a list of my departments, let's say, or my sites, or anything that I have here and it's repeated. I have to do it a lot with courses or classes that I do that are repeated. I need those unique values. So I'm going to go ahead and select this column. I want to get all my departments in one list without me having to manually pick them. Going to go to advanced filters, copy to another location. And I see that Excel still has that A1 through I763, so that's not going to work. I'm going to go ahead and remove this. Select C. There we go. And I'm going to, oh, where did it go? I'm going to remove this because I want to copy this into this column here. I'm going to say unique records only. Select OK. And now I have all my departments. I can go ahead and sort them. There we have them. And now I see what are the different departments from this 763 long, list. So using your advanced filtering, you can obtain those unique values from your lists. So pretty awesome and quick and easy to do. All right, guys, so we've come to, oh, I have one more for you, and it's super easy and fast. So there's another way for you to use your filtering using auto filter. So sometimes I need to filter this specific column based on an item that I have selected here, a filter that I want to check out. So let's say I want to see only the professional training group, and I don't need to go through the filter part. I'm going to go into this quick access tool, and then I will go to more commands. Here, I'm going to go ahead and select in this choose commands from those commands that are not in the ribbon. It's a shorter list. And I'm going to select this auto filter option, and I'll add it to my quick access toolbar, which is this guy right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now let's say I only want to see those in the professional training group. I'm going to select the professional training group cell, and I'm going to go ahead and click on this little guy, and boom, there we have it. So it's going to really speed up the way that I'm doing filters by using this auto filter if you find yourself doing that often. So I can clear this, and let's say I want to focus on those that are job rating 5, click 5, and then click filter. Boom, there we go. So it's a neat shortcut if you are filtering a lot in your work. All right, okay, so now that was my webinar finale, if you may. So let's go ahead and share the webinar attendance link. And also thank you for joining me this lovely evening. I hope you learned a few tricks there that you find useful in your everyday work. Just one thing, if you learn one thing, I think that I'm good with that. I'm going to go ahead and paste the attendance link in the chat, so you should see it right there in our chat. And I will send a follow-up email, and I'll include the link to our recording for today. So you can go ahead and review it, pause it, practice in the file, and just, have that as a resource as you need the tools. Sometimes we may need them until we come back, right, on the school year or months ahead. So like, oh, I remember Angela showing me something that would be helpful for this. So you can go back and revisit that video. So go ahead and